Hello, welcome back to the Inner. Today I have with me Sinette Dior Nelson. Hello.
Greetings, Becca Nafir, which is good morning in Meta Nature.
Awesome. How are you?
I am doing well, doing well.
It's great to have you on. If you could introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay, I go by many names. Dior Nelson is my, as some would say, government name, but my legal name. And of course, I am a high priestess for Sacred Goddess Temple, as well as part of the Shrine of my aunt. We are a sister temple to them. Um, I have, oh my God, I have so much experience and stuff, but who am I? As I guess is kind of a cliche, a spiritual being on a physical journey. Everybody says that, but that to me is true. Probably the best way to explain me what I do now, because I've had years of IT corporate experience in management and consulting in the IT field. But my holistic health comedic journey um, all started, I guess, about 2010. So that grew into me now becoming or being initiated as a priestess. And that is my priestess name, Hemet Nutert Amut Samari Aset Amente Nefer Nebahet. So it's long, but from a spiritual context, we should have five Kemetic names. It's all about frequency. Um, so that's kind of who I am for now.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, what does your comedic name mean?
Oh my goodness. Really, it is about enlightenment. I give birth to the Great Mother as we travel through the spinal cord or the cerebral spinal fluid for enlightenment, as well as going through the duat of what we say the underworld, understanding the physical death. So, bottom line is resurrection, rebirth, and I give birth to that. I am the soul doula, for lack of a better term, to help you with, guide you, uh, or guide you to understand your soul's purpose and how to care for your soul. So that is me.
All right, I like it. So, if you could kind of narrate for us your spiritual journey, where did you start out and how did you end up where you are now?
Oh wow. You got time for that? You know,
Yeah, we got time for that.
when you're an elder, it's quite long and lengthy, but I'll try to give a cliff note version. As most of us in our Black culture grew up in the Baptist church, baptized at 12 years old. And then I guess through that journey, you know, singing in the choir, Bible study, all of those great and wonderful things. But I was just going to church. And as many of us, we don't make changes until something critical happens in our life. In about 1996, I considered myself a Bible thumper. Uh, I was in my early 30s, I guess, um, and began to really study what drove that. I ended up being diagnosed with a pituitary tumor, being faced for the first time with my immortality or mortality. Um, I didn't understand it. It had to do with my brain. They saw specialists, surgeons, but it took a year to find out exactly what was wrong. And in that time, um, they said, "Oh, we're gonna go through your nose. We're gonna have to break your nose and do all of these things, and we don't know how large the tumor is. And if it is large, you may have to take some kind of nose spray to keep from urinating on yourself. You won't be able to have children." So imagine what a 30 something year old, when you think that you've put marriage and children until you have that picket fence, the husband, and all of those things. And now that was your choice, but now it's no longer your choice. So it sent me in a deep depression. That drove me. I went to a revival because I was a assistant minister in a very large church, about 5, 6,000 people, in Newark, New Jersey. Uh, and it hit me. I was like, all these preachers, they always say, I went in my prayer closet and God told me. And I said, well, I'm going to do this and go into my prayer closet. It's not restricted to them. Excuse me. And a friend of mine, you talk about how the universe meets you where you are. A friend of mine that had no idea, she was Catholic, very corporate, all of those things, sent me a book by Ayanna Van Zant, and it was Tapping the Power Within. And it was her first version. So, not kind of the watered down version. It was her very first back in 1995, I think was when it was published. And all of this stuff, it was like, well, got to try something because this isn't working. And fear, depression, like I said. Um, and so, what I would do is so funny because I was high up in this church and ran a ministry. Of course, I was still studying the Bible. Um, but I would turn my lights off, turn off my answer machine. Yes, I'm aging myself. The answering machine. We had answering machines back then. And I would turn it off so nobody would know that this is what I was going to try to do. So I'm a doer. So I started putting into place what was in the book to really search within. And I fasted, I prayed, and all of those things. And I finally had that spiritual experience, my own resurrection. I now understand what that means. So it was not just for Jesus, it's for each one of us. And when I discovered that, oh my God, I actually channeled my higher self for 6 months. It was an amazing, amazing journey. As I say, it takes a lot of inner work. Some call it shadow work. It is also called the kabit in the Kemetic form. It is part of the division of the spirit. And it is necessary not to wallow in it, but to begin that journey to clear out the junk so you have room for spirit. It's like you can't pour into a filled vessel, whether it's traumatic, whether it's, all of the ego, all of those things, you got to make room. And so um, one night I was learning how to meditate, didn't know what that was, didn't know what all this other stuff was, this metaphysics, rocks or crystal. I didn't know any of that. It was purely seeking Jesus's face, by the way. Um, and one night, in going through fasting, of course, I did that fasting, praying, music, vibrational, those things that spoke to my soul. And one night it was like, and this goes to show you how this was one of the things that taught me wherever you put your energy, whoever you see, what you believe becomes how you express what that is. And so, because I was so into Christianity, I say it was Jesus, but it was my higher self now that I've learned more. But reached into my heart. And it was like I was on that cross, laying in the bed, arms out, reached into, and I could see this person reach into my chest and begin to pull out junk. It was like cans and just stuff, just pulling it out, turned around and laid into me. I could feel that energy. And when that happened, oh, what a time. I began to experience everything that people have tried to put names to. And anytime you put names to the universe and spiritual works and gifts, it diminishes it because we all can experience it, but we experience it just a little different. My journey may not look like anybody else's. It doesn't mean you didn't have it. The
Mhm.
universe met you where you were. And so when that happened, that is when I began to separate from the church. And you probably say, well, why? God showed up. It's like God showed up, but then I learned you cannot put the universe in a box. That life was bigger than religion, it was bigger than you could ever imagine if you let go of your preconceived ideas. Not to be stuck in that, but to be open. And so, whether you say God, spirit, ancestors, they led me away because it became very dysfunctional because I was seeking help. And as I was seeking help, it was like, oh, well, God hadn't told me that. Well, now you've got jealousy. The preachers, they don't want that because they want their parishioners to be dependent upon them. Got to keep those tides coming in. Hope I didn't offend anybody, but it is what it is. So, in doing that, it opened me up to a whole new way of living and a whole new way of experiencing the love of God. Uh, Astro traveled. They said, well, if you saw the face of God, what did it look like? You would be surprised through my experience in traveling to that. It is a love that passes all understanding. It is a completeness and a wholeness that you cannot put words around. And that started the journey. So I was looking, what now? And I read Ra'um Nafa Amon's book, uh, Meta Netter 1. And I guess because I'm a Scorpio and I'm a little analytical and a little corporate, so everything has its place. And, I need to understand this. And so I'm a mystic, a skeptic mystic. It's like I believe in it because as a child, I came into this world being a medium. Um, I don't even like to say that word, but I was given the gift to see and hear those that had not finished their journey uh, to the afterlife or gone through the duat and actually just continue to move on to the next step. Um, and I knew this because we were at a funeral. I guess I was maybe 4 years old or something. And we were at a funeral, and I was with my grandmother and grandfather. And everybody was crying, but kids are just honest, right? They don't sugarcoat anything. They don't know if it's hurting somebody's feeling or whatever. And I said, Granny, why are they crying? Why is everybody so sad? And she said, because, and she was trying to explain death to me. And I was like, well, he's not dead. He just got out of the casket and walked through the pastor study. And my grandma said, don't tell anybody that. Don't you say that. They'll think you're crazy. Don't ever say that. So that began the journey of me suppressing or running from my God given gift. We all have them. We all can experience all the different gifts, but some are more prominent than others um, within each person. So when I start experiencing my higher self, just giving context, I was not afraid. And I began to embrace that moment. And it also demonstrated, I say, God gave me a glimpse. Mother, Father, God, Creator, whatever you want to call my higher self, of what living at a higher vibration was like. it was drawing people to me that I did not know. I could hardly go anywhere. I'd go to the grocery store and people would just come to release their grief. Their they would just come I didn't know who they were. They would just walk up to me and just start talking. Next thing you know, they've got tears running and all of that. All of that to say, I I was overwhelmed by it because I didn't speak. I wasn't talking, but they were just sharing and they were like, "Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you." It was like what? It was just the presence of the universe, of all that is. They were getting what they needed. So, being still, I began to understand what that meant. Um, it was just a lot. So when I read Ram Nefer Amon's book, it began to resonate. Oh, this is what this is. It made sense to me. How he explained the Paut Netaru, but more importantly, how he explained uh, the neocortex, the pituitary gland, all of these things, excuse me, begin to make sense. And I said, "Oh, I need to study this." And eventually, I even had to ask, was like, why am I so uncomfortable in the church? I became a problem for the church because now I can hear everybody's thoughts. I can hear and see colors, the colors of people's aura when they were at a higher level. All these things were happening to me, but here we are again, people squashing it, saying that you're crazy or saying that you're this or you're that, and making me feel very uncomfortable. And so I was like, why is this? Because I'm like, Jesus just did this for me. So why would Jesus do this and not have me in the church? I could not understand that. And that was when I was taught that it's bigger than this and that I had other work to do. And so I left the church and began the journey. So in about 2010, I was again searching for other people because I didn't know where to go, but I was working, flying every week, just busy with life. So there was a lot of gaps in that. And so I called Dr. Akua Gray of A Life of Peace, and she answered the phone. And I say she answered my call because that's when I first started my journey with Sacred Woman. Met Queen Afua and all of those folks and began to study that. Now, mind you, before I met them, I did decrease the size of my pituitary tumor because the medication was killing me. But I was reading books like East of Eden, I think is the name of the book. So I did the blood cleanse. I did research. I stopped taking the medication. I started doing red clover to help with tumors and other things, and eating better and exercising. Next thing you know, I was much better. And even today, the last MRI that I received, they cannot find the tumor. However, there is residue there, and that's a whole nother conversation about DNA and the next level of that. But um, that's kind of how I started in all of this. And the next thing I know, I was teaching the rites of passage because it had done so much for me. And I always say, Queen saved my life. Queen of Four saved my life. Had a consultation with her and all of those things much later, like I said, in about 2010 era. And so, because I had gotten out of balance again, because even though you learn, I still had that mindset um, of, oh, I gotta make money, I gotta do this, so I've got to turn away from this whole spiritual, I don't know what I'm going through thing. I can't live that way. I got a mortgage to pay, got bills to pay, that kind of thing. But that also taught me not trusting spirit, being ignorant to it, and being fearful of losing everything. And speaking of that, that's when Aset had picked me to be my spiritual mother at that time. And that's her thing. You have to give up everything to gain everything. And so that's a lesson I've been dealing with for for years because I'm hard headed, and I still want to see. It's like I want to see. I don't know where I'm going. I need to know where I'm going because I've been that kind of person. I set the goals. I did everything right. I had a great career. All of those things. I set my goals. Wanted this by a certain age, that by a certain age, just like they teach you in college and da 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 da. So I have that kind of personality. So I was like, I don't see it. I don't know. And then when it doesn't happen fast enough or manifest the way that we think, again, the way we think by our conditioning, things are supposed to be, look, and feel. And so that has stifled me a little bit. And when I say that, uh, not that it goes away, but it makes the journey a little longer because you will continue to be faced with that lesson. So that's kind of how I got into the Kemetic spiritual system. And I hate to be put in a box, even now that I am a aunt carrier. I don't like to be put in a box because spirit can't be put in a box.
Hmm.
Right now, Kemetic spirituality is what I need because it gives me the space, the instructions, and also why it's important. And that was a big thing because I used to ask church, well, why are we Baptist? Well, why are we this? And people couldn't answer those questions and they don't like questions.
Yeah.
So, Kemetic spiritual system gave me those answers without putting it in a box. And everybody said, well, Egypt, and that's bad. And, you worship all these deities, but they're just aspects of my soul. They're aspects of my being. I don't worship them, I learn from them. So I'm a better person because of understanding and learning to understand them. So um, it's a different way of thinking, and it's very hard if you're at a lower vibration. That's not to be discouraging to anyone. It's just we are where we are, and that's okay. And so that's how I got here. That was a long story, but that's how I got here.
So around what time, how did you ended up getting connected with Sacred Goddess Temple and the Shrine of Ma'at?
Well, Sacred Goddess Temple, as I was sharing a little earlier, back in 2010, I called A Life of Peace, which is run by Dr. Akua Gray and her husband. And they were doing weekend retreats for sacred woman. I was looking for something to get back on track. And Kajira Nebahet, which is the high priest of Raiseki Temple. At
Okay.
the time, she was an ambassador for Queen. And then I went through that process a couple of times and then began to work with Kajira, uh, Akua Gray, as well as Queen Afua. And I just began to, wanting to learn more, and then got acquainted with Queen and went through that process. Now, I studied directly under Queen Afua for a while. Uh, and then we actually, Dr. Akua began to put information in a different way, but similar information. And she built a program called Sacred Goddess Temple Rites of Passage. So I also went through that. But for a while, I was too an ambassador for Queen Afua and teaching. And I got in touch with Queen Afua also through Baba. In 2003, I got married, and Baba Haru did our rings. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
And when I was going to Baba, He said, "Do you know my wife?" And I was like, "No." "Who is your wife?" He's like, "She has a book." And I was like, "Mm." And that was when I was still going to church, right? And he says, "Well, you got to stop playing." He was just in my face about that. Matter of fact, you can't be dipping, one foot in, one foot out. And he introduced me to Sacred Woman. That's how that kind of started. So when Dr. Akua Gray had this class about Sacred Woman, I wanted to be a part of that because I think Queen was out of the country at that time. And so as we began to add some things to the program and do things a little differently, we started that. And part of that program, when we talk about good association, we're talking about good association with ourselves, our family, our spouses, our community. And so for me, that means when you graduate from Sacred Goddess Temple, we're not like other places, we're not like a church replacement. We deal with enlightenment, we deal with self worth, um, nurturing, caring for ourselves, our families, and our community in a holistic way. Um, so at the end of that, we say go out and join. If you want to continue on your comedic journey, go to Dr. Ashby and Comedic University. Go to Ram Nefer if that's your thing. I read a lot of his books, but I am not an Asara set. Um, it's not me. That path is not me. But he has a lot of information that I think is critical, especially scientifically, how we put all this stuff together and begin to digest what it all means. Um, and also, I started watching Shrine of Ma'at, and I used to bug Baba Haru about why don't you go online? And this was before online was really a thing, y'all. So he said, I will do it online. And then finally he says the Shrine of Ma'at was doing their first 42, but they were doing it too for people that were local. So I just started watching them. Um, so I was introduced to him, and I thought it was the part, I guess, that I saw myself missing because Sacred Goddess Temple, again, we're dealing a lot with the soul. We're dealing a lot with trauma. We're dealing on how to handle it, how to heal, energy medicine, naturopathic medicine. We're from that perspective. So I wanted to learn a little bit more about the history and putting those pieces together. Um, we talk about balance, we talk about learning. And so the timing had not always been right. So this time it worked out. And I think I met Jabari face to face for the first time, or I should say in Tepe Jabari, here in Arizona when he came to kick off the Shrine of Ma'at Banu um, here in Phoenix. And from that point, he was like, "Oh my God, there was a priest. There's a priest here in this area because he didn't have one, and see if we could have a relationship." Again, that's still in alignment with what Sacred Goddess Temple recommends and continues to stress to those that have come through our rites of passage and our mastery program. We have a mastery program, and we will soon have a priest program. Um, so it was all in alignment and things happen in divine time. So those other times it just wasn't time for me to work with the Shrine of Ma'at. Um, and I learned a lot through I did take the initiation here recently. I think you were in the same class,
We
right?
were in the same class.
All right. So that's what
What is
got
the
me.
name? Shimsu Ma'at.
Yes, Shemsu Ma'at. That is us. And so that's where that started from.
Okay, cool. So that is something that I have respected a lot as I started exploring the Kemetic spiritual science, getting to know some of the people, is that there's not much or really any competition going on as there was back in Christianity, where um, the network thrives very well, where a different shrine might have a better hold on a certain area of expertise, and they'll gladly send people over there. It's like, oh no, we don't do that here. You might want to go over there. They'll better assist you with that if that's what you feel called to. So
And
I definitely love that.
yeah, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier. We all have our spiritual niche. We all have our soul's purpose. And that's not competition, but when we all get together, it strengthens all of us to become something we can't even imagine. We're not there yet, but almost. And that is key. And I think back in the day, they used to have a council with Baba, Ramnefa Amen, and other um, what Kaba and some I don't know, doctors, Professor Smalls. A lot of them got together and they said we don't want to be divisive, and so it was like also about the language. It's just like here, English. It's different in the Northeast. It's different in Mississippi, and it's different in California. Orange and orange. It's still the same thing. Same thing in meta nature. As we're trying to revive and restore my aunt, the language is important because it is about vibration. And when I talked about that earlier, we have to elevate or raise our vibration. Eating right is only part of it. What we call each other, how we greet each other, how we speak to one another, that's energy that's shared back and forth. So it's like we're not going to let, because you pronounce a Kemetic word different than I do. We shouldn't argue over who's right about the language. And so we kind of know about where that is, and so it's like it's okay. And if I need
Yeah,
to ask you, what, say that again, or you saying such and such, it's okay. But we should not fight over it.
yeah,
Again, that's
battling
a low
over
level distraction.
yeah, battling over Hotep versus Hetep.
Exactly. Exactly. It's the same thing because meta nature words do not have vowels.
Yeah,
We are inserting vowels to help us try to figure out how to enunciate and pronounce the names. So again, it's that what part of the country are you from? And that's going to determine if you put a O or a E. you know, and that's okay too.
yeah. So continuing with the science itself, one of the key aspects of that is the Netaroo. What have been some of the Netaroo that you would consider your favorite, or some that you've engaged with the most that align with you the best?
First of all, I talked about Aset a little bit. She was my first guardian through. The thing about initiation, and some initiations do this and some do not, and it doesn't make it right or wrong. But through the ones I've been through Sacred Goddess Temple, so my spiritual parent was Aset. Aset also, I say, probably uh, was prominent in my work because it's a good transition from Christianity as well, right? She is the person that Mary, if you believe that, I'm not criticizing it, and I'd be crazy if I would, because it brought me to this point. So why I have moved on from it, I don't criticize it. I think any religion can get us where we need to be if we view it in a different light, not so much as a controlling factor, but a guide. Then we would be okay. But the aspects of Mary was Aset. I worked with Aset a lot. And I'm going to tell you, I was given the name, Kajira named me, divined my name. And here is the thing, I guess I'm kind of getting off here, but people like to pick their names. Some like to divine the names. Some have said, well, when you divine names, then that gives people kind of an idea that you can only get a name through them or go through them to get it. That is not the way that we use that. I was divined a name. I have the option to use it or not use it. I have the option to find out what it means or doesn't mean. because when you are divined a name, I truly believe it is given by the ancestors, your guardians and guides, for a reason. And if we think about the history of African spirituality, we talk about different ceremonies. In fact, Malidoma Same, rest his soul, um, did a book of Water of Spirit. I loved that book of Water and Spirit. If you can get it, get it. If you haven't read it, I could not put that book down. But it talked about rituals and how if you skip it, you have to go back. Well, those of us that were stolen, we did not get a chance or even know what that ritual was. So we're kind of wandering around aimlessly. There were ceremonies where the expected mother and the village or the town, I don't even know if we want to call it the village, the community would have this ritual to understand the divine purpose of that person coming into this spirit, this physical realm. They would then name that child. So every time that name was called, it would have you or cause you to remember. It also helped the community help raise you because, oh, well, we know why he does that. So we need to cultivate this so that person can become who they're supposed to be so they can fulfill their soul's purpose. We no longer have that. So I'm not saying, we go into this thing, there's no accidents or coincidences. But when we are in our ego state, our controlling state, what we want and our desires, if we're not aligned with our souls, we can get off course. And it becomes greed or, whatever, I want this, or maybe it's something that's covenant. But I like the way this name sounds. Great. But what does that energy bring into your soul? Is it in alignment with it or opposition to it? So we divine the name, and then it's up to you what you do with it. It took me maybe 7 years before I couldn't pronounce it. I didn't know what it was all about. So I just kind of kept it in the shadows. Um and then through meditation and still doing my spiritual work, my introspection, um, she shared with me what I was supposed to do. It is not coming or manifesting until now. That's a long time. Yes. And I think part of that is that I started this journey, I was almost 40 when I actually started the journey. So it takes time for that conditioning and the open up and to be able to receive it. And it is a completeness. And then I'll say, I've been doing all of this to go back to where I started. So I deal with Aset because she actually did take a ride. She drove the boat as well to go through what I understood and how that translates into spirituality is the cerebral spinal fluid. And because of my awakening or rebirth, that is why I believe that they showed me that. This is what you're supposed to be doing. This is what, because not everybody gets there. That's not saying they can't. I'm not saying they had to do it the same way I did, but you can't tell me I had that experience just to have it. So in doing that, I said, instead of turning people off, I need to share my experience. I need to help guide others if they are ready. So I sat in that nurturing mother, that great mother, back to my name, it begins to all come together. So I love her for her love of her children, the love of my community. And she shows up every day to help on that nurturing journey. The other person that I'm very, very tied to, which was gone through my priesthood training, was Nebahet. And guess what? It was so funny because, and I have my sacred woman ring from Queen as well. And who's on here? Nebahet and Aset. They have been with me, and I didn't know why. I didn't know what. I didn't even know how they went together. So the more I grew, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, because I didn't expect Nebahet to show up for my priesthood. I went to a totally different group. It's like they were not working together, as I said. So I thought, oh, clean, new set of folks, new set of things. I don't know. And then it came up that this was going to be uh, my guide through my priesthood training, and it was Nebahet. And it wasn't until I was in the middle of it that I go, wait a minute. I had to go back. I was like, wait a minute. I've still been under them to do something. And the thing that is great about these deities, and we think about how they came to fruition for Queen, it's a little different for me. And that's the beautiful part of this. Our uniqueness, you can say, oh, you're supposed to do um, spiritual work, just to kind of throw something out there. But ours is going to be different, even though it may be by the same guide, because it uses our uniqueness to manifest that. And we need that because different people are drawn to different things. So it may be similar information, but it's delivered differently, and that's okay. So those have been my two. Nebahet, um, in her strength in helping me through this priesthood, has just been phenomenal. She was with me on a spiritual journey because I don't promote psychedelics. I don't, the mushrooms, but I did do them during my priesthood training. I don't think I'll ever do it again, but it took me through the duat, and Nebahet was there to hold my hand, to calm me down, to do those things. And she has her experience from a spiritual perspective was similar to some of the things I had gone through. So I developed a strong relationship with her, and I invoke her most of all now. Um, Also, I love working with Mayat and Tahuti. And I always say, Mayat helps us do introspection and helps us identify what we need to work on at this moment. We got to remember we're never going to be perfect. Don't have time to unpack all that stuff. And we don't want to get so bogged down in the shadow work that we don't, because it can get pretty dark. You don't want to stay there, but for the next thing. So Mayat helps me stay centered and focus through Mayat, the laws of Mayat, the guidance of Mayat. And Tahuti kind of gives me the formula, tells me what to do and how to clear whatever it is that I need to move forward with. So I work with them extensively.
Okay.
Um,
So one of you mentioned Aset, and I've grown to like Aset myself. You mentioned how she's very compatible with Mary. I've also seen how compatible she is with Holy Spirit or Ruach Hakodesh as well, in that it's that divine mother, that heavenly mother. Um, Even as far as like the narrative of putting Asar back together, those different pieces of God, it's Holy Spirit that kind of puts all of us, which are the pieces of God, together, unifies the family, unifies and helps us work as one. So I've grown to respect that aspect as well.
oh yeah, and I agree. And that's what you hit on, a note that I usually always say. And we talk about we're scattered. We talked about that, and putting those 14 pieces back together. That's what I consider part of even my meditation system. It's a way to begin to put these pieces together. And I think that's just a beautiful way to express it. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah. So, what does communicating with or communing with the Netaroo look like for you?
Um, well, I do altar work. Uh, and so I do invocations to bring that in through my altar work. And what does that mean? My altar has things that uh, she likes or she's known to have liked. And when I say invocation, I sing, of course, praises and the aspects of her, and to ask for her presence in whatever it is that I'm going through for guidance. And then through meditation at my altar, I wait. Um, and sometimes that means that I also do certain energy work if she wants me to do particular energy work. Sometimes I'm not ready to receive what she has to share with me intuitively. And I'm talking intuitively, that small, still voice. Sometimes you get silence, but you just keep going. And I'm one of those that I guess I kind of equate it to prayer and then meditate listening, right? So those things that are going through, I journal. I journal those things. And because I'm a water sign, I can get so distracted. So what I do is I say, I want three things. And until if I have anything, sometimes I no longer ask for things in prayer other than understanding and guidance. And so I write those down, and I just be until those answers are revealed. Um, and so I start with that, um, and then just do meditation with whatever that looks like, whether I'm doing self energy work, I'm just being still, um, kind of like Kundalini yoga, but more importantly, just quiet time. I'm also one of those. I say if we're too active, we can't hear. If we're even doing breath work and we're making a lot of noise, at some point you stop so you can hear. And to me, that's the be still and hear. Be still and know. So that quiet aspect, and that's part of why my meditation, so it gets us back to the basics. Just like the West, we're still part of the West. We can say we're not, but we have that in our head. And my thing is, I get back to the basics, teach you how to be still and be breath and do breath work. Breath work of the gods is more advanced. But then how do we focus? How do we focus? And altars are not worshiping those deities or anything. It's just a place to help us focus our energy.
Like a Wi-Fi router.
Yep. There you go. There you go. Yep. Yep. So that's kind of how I spend the time. And sometimes that's wearing her colors just to keep me focused throughout the day. Or, you know, I have something on her, whether it's the lapis lazuli, part of my priestess garb. I have a kind of like a sash, but it's done with sandalwood and lapis lazuli. Um, just to have that connection at all times so that I am ready to hear when it is time for me to hear.
Okay. So concerning priesthood, um, could you kind of talk about some of the duties? What does that look like in action?
Oh, it's so many things. It's teaching. I say the biggest part or the most salient point is holding sacred space. Is holding sacred space. Um, I do readings, but I'm not one of those that go out and solicit reading or tell you I do readings or. It's when it's that time and we need to commune with the ancestors or whatever, then I will do a reading. Um, because I commune most with ancestors because I am a medium. Um, but I do prayer. People will call and they might say, especially like during COVID, as an example, would you pray for my mother, sister, brother, family member? And a lot of people ask, uh, will they be okay? Those are questions none of us really have the answer to because there's so much dependent upon that. And being able to hold space and communicate to the best of your ability so people don't get hurt but get the hard truth. Um, and sometimes just listening. So you take on a lot of people's pain, trauma, indecisiveness, but you have to teach people how to make decisions for themselves. I don't know what's right for you. I don't know anybody that is. And I'm not going to be the one that tells you God said, or Tahuti said. No, they didn't, because you have your own connection with God. And until I have the permission to speak or be that intermediary, I don't know. And I won't know then because we do not know. Every individual has their own decisions. So I do that. I do funerals. And the funerals are for, it could be a couple of things, whether they're already deceased and didn't cross over. And that causes pollution, by the way, as well as a physical death funeral, weddings, um, house blessings. I had to do a lot. I learned the hard way that you got to always be ready as a priestess. You got to have your stuff with you at all the time. Even though we teach medicine bag, my medicine bag is no longer appropriate. It is inadequate for the next level work. Um, I went to Dallas. I think I shared this in class. I went to Dallas, and all of a sudden, all my family members wanted a house blessing. Uh, and then once they start getting it, everybody wanted one. It was like, y'all realize I'm not Christian, right? And so they didn't care. They were like, no, it's just something about you. You got to get this done. So house blessings, blessings of businesses, and those kinds of things. So all of those things. Um, and also I teach. I teach and I guide. I am also a death doula, which is part of that funerary piece. Um, the biggest thing, the other biggest thing, this like biggest thing, um, is that I have to work on me because there's a part of purification so that I don't have an ego telling you what God said and what you ought to do. I am not the one to tell you what to do. I am here to help you unfold on how to find out what to do for you. So I consider we should be guides. So I have to work on my health. I have to work on purification. I have to be that example of how to raise that vibration. I have to be that example of what comes next. And none of us are perfect. And so those are the most pressing. You got to take care of home first because you have to be available. And why, while you think of priest or priestess or that we have church services, some do, and that's okay. But even the Kemites, they took care of the temple. And for that translation, that's for me, that's the body. I help you take care of you. I have help you learn how to prepare alkaline foods or raw foods or, what that means. Is it about your blood type? What we need to do to start to heal. And again, there are suggestions. What works for me may not work for you, but I need to teach you how to find out what works for you and be there to be of service. Selfless service is big. And that's why Sacred Goddess Temple, we deal with the community, and we're getting ready to launch our Pert and the Turt. What we learn, it's like train the trainer. We want it out there in the community. And out there in the community for me looks like not only teaching meditation or teaching you how to die gracefully, teaching you how to live life with a healthy soul, but also what do we do with the kids? How do we implement more learning? How do we implement holistic support where it's a naturopath, to be that in the community, an energy worker, whatever it is, we're putting these things in the community to be those hubs. So, learning, growing, sharing, implementing. So, that's kind of what we do.
Okay. So this is going back to something you mentioned a whole lot earlier, and this just for me, right? This is just my own curiosity. You mentioned the ability to see spirits, seeing auras, reading minds, cardionosis, um, all these different manifestations. What are some others well, I really have two questions. Is this something that's still a part of your repertoire today? Is that something that died down? As well as what are some other things that you may have seen or experienced that you may not have shared just yet?
Uh, it's in and out. And when I say in and out, our vibrations, because we live in the society that we do. An example, I had to care for my mother, and when she passed, I went numb. I couldn't hear or see anything. Our emotional state and our vibrations matter. That's why we talk about balance, but just us in our human form in society, we ebb and flow, up and down, up and down. So during that time when I was able to do that, I didn't have a husband. I was alone, uh, with just my space, and fasting for 30 days or fasting for that long and just dedicating to that is very difficult. So to stay at that level is very, very difficult. I do get glimpses of those things. I still do mediumship, but it's not as crystal clear. Um, when I say crystal clear, when I talk about I could hear what people were thinking. During that time, I had done all of this amounts to you got to do the work. When you fast a lot, when you listen to vibrational music constantly, when you're sincere in your shadow work, when you are focused, as you grow and elevate, those things come naturally. But it's very difficult to stay at that state because we are here to learn. And when you're at that state, you're just being truly led by spirit. So it's just like somebody's pulling you around. So you have to be humble, and you truly have to be that vessel. That's difficult to be at that state consistently. But it can come back. And like I say, it's there. You just got to put in the work to do it. Um, I'm married, and I'm just life. I got to do stuff for my husband, and that's not a bad thing. I love it. He may not want to fast for 30 days. He doesn't like fasting. Like it's like I can get him to detox with me, but the fasting, we did it for 2 weeks. He was done. He's like, I need to eat. So it's where you are. It's working. Can you do it by yourself? Sure. I'm not that disciplined. I'm just being honest. I'm not that disciplined. If I got to cook, I'm cooking him a meal. I got to taste it. I'm looking all those things, right? So it becomes a little bit more difficult. And that's why I tell my young ladies that are students that are single, take this time. Take this time to know who you are and to experience for yourself. Then bring all the other people and the noise in. Yes, we need relationships. We love relationships. I'm not saying don't get married, but I'm saying when you are alone, do that work for yourself. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of long winded, but did I answer your
Nah, that was
question?
a good answer. So we're getting ready to close. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with the audience for anyone that could watch this?
I would just say on your journey, it's our soul, the God within us, that peace that was left, that comforter that was left to be with you at all times. Cultivate it and pay it the most attention. And I don't want to call it an it, but give your soul what it needs because it will put you back on track. Because they say when you're doing what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Same scenario. When you find your soul's purpose, it is so fulfilling. And let the universe, because we attract. We talk about attraction and the secret and all of those things. If you first seek the kingdom within you, the rest will come.
That's great. um, if you could kind of release a blessing over the audience.
Okay. Anitrek Nebahet, Anuk Nebahet. Anitrek Nebahet, Anuk Nebahet. Anitrek Nebahet, Anuk Nebahet. As we're individually on this journey, have compassion for yourself, for the mistakes or lessons. Take them, grow from them, and above all, seek first your soul's purpose. Regardless of your spiritual or religious path, personalize it. Go within. For when we are whole, we don't need to worry about what others are doing because spirit will move the mountain. Spirit, the universe, will protect us and guide us. We know we have things that are important to us: shelter, clothing, feeding, education. It's a heavy burden. May we give those things to the universe. May we focus on the soul so we can receive everything our community needs. May we produce the politicians, city planners, electricians, architects, scientists, biologists, psychologists, psychiatrists, astrology, astronomy, as we each focus on our individual talents to share within our community. May we be able to put aside envy, jealousy, self-hatred, and embrace our uniqueness and love of self and others, whether they look like us or not. But first, we must trust and love, put aside the self hate, and come together with love, compassion, and in the spirit of Ma'at. May it be restored for the betterment of ourselves, our families, our community, and the world. Shem Im Ma'at.
So, thank you. Where can people connect with you? Where can people find you? Do you have any books out, any projects out?
Yes, I have a lot of those. I have a for profit company, which is called Soul Sojourner. It can be found at www.soul-sojourner.com. And there you will find that our vision there is to revive and honor the ancient African rituals that foster higher consciousness and provide profound support during the sacred journey of the dying process, inspiring individuals to connect with their inner wisdom and embrace the beauty of life's transitions. That's where you'll also find cultural training, the soul's journey training, and of course, the empowerment training. Well, we teach you once you identify your soul's purpose, how do we begin to manifest it? While we're being still, we still have to do the work. Also, have herbal teas that are there that are now FDA approved, trademarked, and ready to go. And they can be purchased on the website as well. And other meditation tools are there also. Also have a nonprofit. The nonprofit is Soul Sojourner Wisdom Teachings. And the website is soulsojournerwisdomteachings.org. It is a nonprofit. When you purchase the teas, 3% of the profit goes to the nonprofit. The nonprofit extends our arm internationally as well as locally. We have projects that are coming up or trying to get kicked off in Ghana to help the women of Ghana, as well as it also helps us with scholarships for those that are here in the US to take the rites of passage journey. We have a clinical director, which is a psychologist, and we actually are putting together projects to go save our babies at assessment centers and group homes. And we've put together a plan statistically. So we're doing it all professionally. And so if you want to contribute to that, because some of those assessment centers and group homes or nonprofits, and so they don't always have the money for us to work with them to reduce the amount of pharmaceutical medications that are given to our babies at such a young age. And we're looking to do that naturally and holistically through the teas and other ways of eating and education about our ancient African heritage. So that's where you can do it. And my phone number, excuse me, is on the website. As well as you can email me at soulsojourner0@gmail.com and I will respond to that. Or my number is 214-799-4680. May not answer the phone right away, especially if I don't recognize the number. I strongly suggest please leave a voicemail. I will get back with you.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me here today. It's been an honor. And that concludes this episode of The Inner. Y'all be blessed. Until next time.